Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "The purpose of life is to live it, to taste experience to the utmost, to reach out eagerly and without fear for newer and richer experience." This is the Producers Lounge podcast. Welcome back for Season 2, hosted and produced by GreaterandGrander.com. On this week's episode, we're chatting with Evan Weinstein, who has produced and directed unscripted television going back 30 years, including The Amazing Race and America's Funniest People. Most recently, he was on the field producing team of Borat Subsequent Movie Film. Evan is a fantastic guy and also a great sport. A quick note about this episode, we always like to do live interviews when possible instead of Zoom. In this instance, we met at a location in the valley with outdoor seating right by a park, so you may hear a motorcycle go by or some ambient noise, but it's a fantastic conversation nonetheless. Here now is my conversation with Evan Weinstein. So where are you from originally?
I'm from New York originally. I grew up in New York and came out here in 1987.
Nice.
Yeah.
East Coast.
East Coast.
I'm actually from Stamford, Connecticut.
Oh, okay. Yes, I have. Yes. WWE is there.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. You're one of the few people to know that, because most of the people, when I tell them that, they ask, "Did you grow up on a farm?"
Oh, no, not Stamford. A little further out, maybe.
Yeah.
Besides, Connecticut's not New Jersey. So there you go. So that's the real farmland.
Yes. Poor one for those poor people in New Jersey.
Exactly. But yeah, I grew up in New York. Went to went to the High School of Performing Arts as a music major. Then went to Syracuse University as a theater major and was going to direct Broadway musicals is what I wanted to do. And when that wasn't really coming to fruition in the mid '80s, I came out here and got into television. That's essentially, and I've been here since.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let me ask, when you first got out here, what was your, big your first actual entertainment industry job?
I was working as a bartender at Tony Roma's in Encino, and one Friday, it was a Friday, happy hour, a lot of people were in there, and this guy came in with a couple of other people, and he was celebrating having been promoted to an associate producer on this particular project, whatever it was, I didn't know at the time. And I congratulated him, I bought him a drink, and then I said, and as he was paying, when they were ultimately leaving, I actually had my resume with me. And I handed him my resume and I said, "Listen, if you ever need anyone, I'm just out here looking to get my foot in the door, whatever, this and that." And he called me the next Monday or Tuesday and said, "We just had a PA quit. Would you be interested in the job?" I said, "Yes." And so I left Tony Roma. So I was only a bartender for maybe 5 weeks, something like that. So I left Tony Roma's and I started work as a PA on an NBC Movie of the Week. So I worked on that, and they kept me on into post-production, so the job lasted quite a few months. And then the show, even though it hadn't aired yet, had been a backdoor pilot for a series. Oh, wow. So they actually picked it up to series, so they kept me on as they were starting to get into the writing and all of that. And then the big writer's strike of 1988 hit. Well, that's what put me out of work. So it put me out of work, and it lasted a very long time. That strike lasted 9 months or something crazy like that.
Oh, wow.
It was very, very long, much longer than the last one that was whatever it was, 10 years ago. But anyway, so I was a tour guide in Beverly Hills, driving one of those little trucks and all that kind of stuff. And then when it all ended, it was basically like starting from the beginning, because I'd only worked on one job. I didn't know anybody really. Nobody had been doing anything for 9 months. So the odd thing was that I was offered a job by those same people.
Nice.
So working on another show. So that was when I really started to actually work. And then, like everybody else, I had good years, bad years. Some years I was doing survival jobs, some years I was working in television, and eventually got my foothold and made my way up. So
what's the funniest story from one of your survival jobs, I gotta ask?
Oh God, I had so many when I was a tour guide, right? And it was these little buses that go around through the Hollywood, and you go to the Chinese theater, and you go to And then you drive them down the Sunset Strip, and you go into them. And people ask from different places, ask all kinds of questions. And so we were at the Chinese theater, and we get back into the van after they've been looking around, and we start to drive. Someone says, I have a question. I don't understand how they get those footprints into the hard cement. And there was silence in the van, because they couldn't believe that this person was asking that question. And I said, and I was like, is that straight? She goes, no, really, I don't get it. You know, I mean, they've put in the sidewalk, and then and how do they do it? And I said, well, they get the people to stand there in place and jump up and down over and over again until they, and the van laughed, and I got really good tips that day, but I felt bad for sort of it, but it was the stupidest question I think I've ever heard in my life, was how do they get the footprints into that hard cement? Yeah, it was, yeah. And then I said, no, they take it out and they lay fresh cement, and she goes, oh, that makes sense. And I think her husband was ready to kill her, but yeah, that's, you know, from the survival days, that was, you know, but it was fun. It was a good time.
Nice. And what were some of the series that you worked on that you enjoyed the most at that time?
Well, back then, I mean, the thing that really got me into reality television was I was hired onto a show called America's Funniest People, which was the sister show to Funniest Videos. Now, Funniest Videos is still on.
Right.
Obviously, it's been, 30 years, whatever it's been. But for the first couple of years, there was the sister show, America's Funniest People. And we had a ball. I mean, what the concept of the show was just holding these what we called them auditions, but they were basically just these big open calls in malls and out in parks and things like that, depending on the time of year and the weather. You know, some that did it on beaches, on 4th of July, whatever it was, and people would come down, and the concept was that not everybody has a 20-minute stand-up act, but most people have one joke or something fun that they can do. So the idea was that it would be some sort of, like grassroots talent show kind of thing. And people, came on came up, told their joke, did a song parody, did whatever it was. The point being was that setting this up and then watching all the material and doing all that, it was just fun. It was that we spent 3 years, it was 3 seasons, and we were all young. We were all like 25, 26.
Right.
We became very close friends. We were all single. We went on camping trips. We did happy hours. We did all of those things that single people do, back in the day before there was internet to keep us busy. And so the whole day was just spent laughing. I mean, it was work. We had to set up these things, and there was, you had to have your ducks in a row and all of that kind of stuff. But we just had a great time for 3 years producing that show. We just had a really, really good time. It was just comedy all day long, every day. So, so it was fun.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
And it kind of gave you a lot of experience that you would later use in shows like the Borat movie that you worked on.
Well, right. I mean, Borat was a whole, other world that was very, very interesting, because I got hired on that because of my experience, doing surveillance house shows. I had done several of them. I did Celebrity Rehab. I did this show called Bud House, where we were down in South Africa during the during World Cup back in 2010, and we basically set up like Big Brother at the World Cup. So, this is sort of a testament to how this business works.
Yeah.
So, somebody I worked with on a number of those shows, who really was a feature film AD, but had gotten into sort of directing reality shows. He's the one who called me up, and he said, I'm an AD on this feature film, and it was all very hush-hush about what it was until, I signed non-disclosure agreements, and until, they had to vet me first,
right,
before they told me what it was. And so it was like, it's an unusual thing. It's sort of improvisational, this kind of stuff, but as part of it, we're putting together basically a Big Brother house. And because this is a feature film, the people working on it don't really know how to do that. And so looking to hire, a reality person to basically come in and set up this one aspect of the thing.
Right.
And I said, oh, well, that's really interesting because it's, it's a feature film, but it's, whatever. So we went through, they vetted me and interviewed me, and I had no idea what it was. They're just like, because finally they go, okay, everyone likes you. Now you have to meet the one big boss to make sure he likes you. I'm like, okay. So at this point, we need you to sign all the papers, and we need to so you know what it is. And that was when I found out it was the sequel to Borat. And basically, that's really what it was. They had decided, they had filmed most of the movie prior to the pandemic, and then they got shut down. And they had like 5 weeks of filming left. So they knew they were coming back, and while he was home, Sacha Baron Cohen was just decided he wanted to put this new sequence into the movie. And so they decided the only way that they realized they could make that happen with him being in a quarantine house was to set it up basically like a reality show. And so I can't go into all of all the machinations of how they got the people there and all that I can't go into, but it was my job on a very basic level to work with the kinds of people I work with that don't usually work on feature films. The kind of people who do robocams and the kind of people who do surveillance audio and all of that kind of stuff, and location managers, all kind of stuff that we do. And that was basically what it was. I put together my little team. We found the location, and then we set it up. And then once it was all set up, Sacha and his writers and his team of producers took over the space and did their thing. With me, sort of they would turn to me and say, what about this, what about that? How can we make this happen? How can we make that happen? But by that point, there was a real director and everybody else. So my job was really just to sort of back them up and bolster them and make sure that this machine that we put together worked so that they could just come in and utilize it. And I
think it's worth mentioning because I don't think it's worth mentioning this. I know someone who worked on the first Borat movie. And you don't have to confirm nor deny any of what I'm about to say, but in terms of the machinations you did on Borat too. But what I found interesting was that when she worked on the sequences, everyone thought he was organic. Like one sequence that pops up is the van sequence in the first movie.
Okay, yeah.
And so in the first movie, he's just picked up by these hitchhikers, and everyone thinks, oh, he randomly ran into these. What I didn't realize at the time, and what my friend explained to me, was that in that first movie, in that van sequence, they had the van all set up, and then they would bring in these teams of like 3 frat boys at a time, just circling, running through them, 8 teams in like a 12-hour day. So I think that was really interesting.
Right. I mean, again, I actually had nothing to do with how they procured the people or even how they got them there. They kept everything very compartmentalized so that things wouldn't get leaked out or things like that. So literally it was like being a catcher. I and my team, we set up this location and then it all just moved in, is basically what happened. And then we kind of stood there and watched and helped as we were needed. But once they came in, it was their thing. And I had no idea where they found the people, what they said to them, how they got them there. It was literally, So, and I think they do that on purpose. They, so that I can't come to an interview. Because I'm not even holding back. I have no idea. And so therefore their methodology works.
Okay.
I literally couldn't even begin to tell you how they did it.
If it's anything like the reality shows I've worked on, it's one step above writing on a bathroom wall for a good time call.
Right.
So
Could be. Actually, I'll tell you this: how good they were about it. Like I said, we were working really in the last few weeks, right? The thing with Giuliani that we all eventually knew about, obviously saw in the movie, had happened long before that.
Oh.
Long before that during the pandemic. It happened long before that. And no one said a word. No one ever said, hey, when you see this movie, you're not going to believe. No one ever talked about anything that had previously happened on the set. It was all about what are we doing now? And and maybe if it was part of a meeting, you might hear about what they're doing tomorrow, because they were doing other filming, obviously, before and after what I was involved with. But then oftentimes they would say, okay, X, Y, and Z, you can jump off because it was all Zoom at that point because of the pandemic. You guys can jump off the call, you're fine, and we'll continue on. So it was, they really do keep it quiet.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then going back, you started out as a PA working on these various shows in the 90s. When did you move into producing? Like, how did you make that jump?
Well, I actually made the jump at America's Funniest People. I mean, I came in as a segment producer, so basically setting up the shoots, not going in the field at all, but basically setting up the shoots. I had two producing teams that I was working for, and they leapfrogged weekends. So basically what would happen is team number one would shoot Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday in whatever city they were in. And they would then come home, have a day off, and all during the time that they were shooting, I was prepping for Team B. So then Team B would be out the door. They would fly on like Wednesday, which would be the day, or Tuesday, and that would be the day that Team A comes back into the office after being off, gets all of their new material, then and so you're leapfrogging between the two teams. And so that was the way I did that. So I did that for the first 2 seasons, and then they promoted me. The third season, there was a hidden camera unit called the Prank Patrol with these, it was all, candid camera style pranks, but it was supposedly these 5 kids that were pulling them off. And so I was originally promoted to be the producer of that unit, which I started out doing, and then I started nudging them that I wanted to direct. And so they gave me a chance to direct, and once I proved that I could do it, they just kept me for the rest of the season as the director instead of having to hire outside people for the 2 days of directing or 3 days of directing. It would just be, the unit was mine. And I would do that. So that was really how I sort of moved up to sort of more actual hands-on producing and directing in a TV environment and stuff like that. Going out into the field and shooting these hidden camera things.
And it wasn't that kind of traditional Hollywood sort of like you got plucked out of obscurity. No, it was like a 2-year campaign where you.
Yeah, exactly. You pay your dues. You pay your dues. You get to know people. You get them to trust you. Because we'd all like to think as soon as we graduate college, we are fully formed and ready to be the next Orson Welles. And the truth is that A, you're not, and B, because you're not, you have a lot to learn, and it takes a lot of time for people to trust you with their money, because it all comes down to their money.
Right.
And so it basically is, like that hidden camera thing. It was the budget for that, and remember, the budgets back then were bigger. There have been all sorts of contractions since then. Back in the early 90s, that was when everything was union. They were still paying really good salaries to everybody, all that kind of stuff. So our budget was $30,000 a day.
Oh, wow.
So $90,000 for a weekend, basically.
Yeah.
Just to shoot this one thing that would end up being maybe a 3.5-4 minute segment on the show. So you think about it, and then we did however many of them we did, 10 of them. It was almost $1 million for the season.
Wow, you're right.
Right?
Yeah.
If it's 90,000, so you do,
$100,000.
yeah. So you think about it, if they're going to trust this 26-year-old guy with ultimately $900,000, they have to believe that they actually know what they're doing, can be trusted. And if they make, people are going to make mistakes, but if you make a mistake, are you teachable? Will you own it, understand what you did wrong, correct it for the, all that kind of stuff. So it takes time for them to believe that. And then once they do and they give you the chance, ultimately when they give you the chance, you have to come through.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to live up to it. And as much bravado as I showed, got this. So with the first day, I was actually me on the set, and the camera guys were all set up, and they turn to me and they go, "Okay, what do you want?"
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you have to have the answer. And there's that second of, oh shit, it really is me. But then you take a gulp and you do it and you get used to it and then you get more confident, and that's how it works. But the Orson Welles or Lloyd Richards in theater, those scenarios are literally once in a lifetime. Those people come along, Spielberg. I mean, even George Lucas didn't have the fast start that Spielberg had, with directing the TV episodes and the TV movies and stuff like that. So it's like, it's very few people that can just jump into it and just be innately fantastic, so, yeah. So, I mean, that was how I first got into it, how they first did it. And then, you're back and forth. You do various kinds of jobs and things like that, working on talk shows and this and that, and then really I got hired as a writer on Wild Things. It was a wildlife documentary series, which I did for 3 years, writing all the narration, all the trivia, all that kind of stuff, and learned a bit about international travel because they were going out all over the world, and then that was the people who created Amazing Race. And so it was, there you are, you're sitting in, a little room in Hollywood writing narration for a wildlife show, documentary show for 3 years. And then, it ends and you're off doing something else and you get a call from someone who sold a show and like you to come in and work on it, and it changes your life, and I mean, it's like, that's how it happens or doesn't happen, and for those of us that get that one phone call that makes that kind of difference, we're very fortunate.
Yeah. Now, I thought Amazing Race was actually done by Mark Burnett.
It is not.
Oh.
Amazing Race is not Burnett. It's the guy who created it was he and his wife, Bertram Van Munster and Elise Doggin-Yeri, and they were partnered with Bruckheimer.
Oh. Okay.
So it's Bruckheimer's, initially, because that was the thing too, was like, you've never done a show of this ilk before, so they partnered him with Bruckheimer. Plus Bruckheimer was the big CBS guy at the time. He had CSI, and it was just, he was the Pirates of the Caribbean. I mean, he was the big thing. So they put his name to it in order to really market it. But it was all Bert and Elise and the team. I mean, Jerry Bruckheimer had really very, very little to do with it. His television people came to meetings and did stuff like that, but it was the brainchild of Bert and Elise, and that's how it they're the ones who really made it happen.
Okay.
So yeah, and so so
Good.
that kept me busy.
Yeah, and you've been incredibly busy because going through your IMDb Pro, like you have writer, executive producer, director, consulting producer. Your career has been very diverse. How do you, and especially in an industry where you get pigeonholed really easily, how were you able to maintain that kind of diversity where you're directing when you want to, or writing when you want to, or executive producing?
It's very, very, very nice of you to say, how do I manage to do this when I want to or that when I want to? In many cases, I did what I needed to do because I needed a gig.
Right.
So sometimes it's executive producing, sometimes it's directing, sometimes it's a writing gig. Consulting producer. Again, it's all of these different things is because I believe you have to be fluid in the industry. I'm fortunate in that I guess you could say this, is that somewhat early on, people that I worked with gave me an opportunity to try different things. For whatever reason. They needed someone and it was easier to have someone in-house do it than look for someone outside. Or I bothered them and they figured, what the hell, just let them do it, get them off my back, whatever it is. But because I got experience doing various things, I'm able to zig and zag, in terms of looking for work. So when someone says, we've got, our producing staff is full, but we're looking for a writer. Do you want to write? And I'll go, sure. If I need let me write. That's fine. I'll write narration, or I'll write host raps, or, do whatever. We don't know what's happening yet with the show, but we do need somebody to come in and consult and work on format and help build the decks and pitch things to the network. So suddenly you're a consulting producer, which is very intentional on their part, by the way. I don't know if you know why.
No, I'm interested to hear why.
Because consulting producer is a non-Emmy title.
Oh, I see.
So they can bring you in with no risk to the hierarchy. Because you can't be nominated for if the show turns into something big, and they decide not to have you continue on, they don't have to put you as part of the group that gets the kudos if something happens. So it's actually and it also helps them that there aren't executive producers attached and things like that. So there's a reason. It sounds fancy, like I'm a consultant, but it's actually, it's a way for them to keep you at arm's length.
I see.
No, we paid you to be a consultant. You're not entitled to any royalties.
That explains it.
Yep. So it's a fancy word that helps them out.
Okay.
But that's really it. I mean, I'm fortunate in that when I do jump onto projects and sometimes I have the ability to, or I should say the opportunity to wear more than one hat. I might be producing and directing. Sometimes I'm writing and directing, or writing and producing, whatever it is. To some extent, it's easier because I know what's in my head and I know what I'm trying to make happen. Or in reality television, the thing is that if I'm out in the field and I'm shooting something, and as often happens, things don't go as planned, and you have to zig and zag in the field. You have to punt, do this, do that, and you can write it down on paper, but sometimes as you're quickly making these adjustments in your head, you just have it in your brain how this thing you're doing is going to work instead of the thing you were supposed to do, because you can't do the thing you're supposed to do. And sometimes, so if you've done that and then you come back to post and you're actually writing the segment and working with the editor, you can then say, okay, so here's this wacky thing that happened. The way I did it was I did that and that and that, and then I did a pickup all the way at the end of the day that's gonna look like this thing that doesn't make any sense, but if you pull that over here and use that, and they'll go, okay, I got it. In many ways, it's great to have multiple people working because you get more minds, the more creativity you get. I always love collaborators, people throwing their ideas. I always tell people at the beginning of a production, I don't care who you are. If you've got a good idea, tell me your idea. Or if you think you have a good idea, tell me your good idea. If we don't want to use it, no harm, no foul. If we do use it, that's great. We're happy that you gave us that idea. It'll make the show better. And I don't care if you're finance guy, I don't care if you're a PA, I don't care if you're a wardrobe person, you're sitting there and something clicks in your brain and you go, hey, did you think of what? And I've gotten some great things that we've used that way. The people who don't want anyone to say anything and think they have it all mapped out ahead of time, I think unfortunately, their stuff, unless they are one of the true geniuses,
right?
The Wes Andersons and those kinds of people who just have who just have such a completely unique vision that it just all springs from their head.
Right.
I think the people who invite collaboration and invite ideas from whoever and keep that openness on the set ultimately deliver the better material.
That's incredible that you are that open about collaboration, that you make announcements like that, because I'll be honest, a lot of the people I've worked with have not been as open and collaborative, even though it's been repeated to me and my friends and my colleagues time and time again.
Well, I think that also comes back to my upbringing in theater. Because theater is they always say, oh, movies are the most collaborative, but actually no. Theater, and especially musicals, which is what I had hoped to do with my life, musicals, mounting a musical is an intensely collaborative thing, and especially if you've watched any of the interviews this last week that they've been playing with Stephen Sondheim since he died. He talks frequently about how it's everybody working together that makes this moment happen. It's the lyric and it's the music, but it's the performance, it's the lighting, it's the costumes, all of it together. So that's why I have no problem when someone comes over and says, people always couch it a certain way and they go, listen, I don't know if you like this, and whatever it is. And it's like, I'll hear something and I'll go, that's a good idea, And it's also because my mentor when I was in school, a guy named Arthur Storch, who had been a Broadway director who went on to run the theater department at Syracuse University and Syracuse Stage, which is the main, and to this day remains the main professional equity theater in Syracuse, New York. So he did both. And one of the things was, for those of us who wanted to be directors, you would work as an assistant director on the professional show. And I worked with him, and he would always, on the one hand, he made it a point to always, like after something was going on, he would lean over to me and go, do you know why I did that? And then he would explain to me why he worked with an actor a certain way, or said a certain thing to the actor, or told him to do something that seemed to be opposite of what he had previously said, but it was a method to what he was doing, and he was actually teaching me all of these things. By the same token, because of that, he would say, tell me your ideas. Now, because he was from the school, he had a secondary responsibility to try and teach me, which the other visiting directors really didn't need, weren't beholden to anyone. It's like, can you get me coffee, or can you take a note, or do this or do that? He felt beholden to actually teach me. And so he said, tell me your ideas, always tell me your ideas so we can discuss them, and what would you do, how would you solve this problem, this and that, and we'll talk it out. And I think because of that, that's one of the reasons why it's like, we're here. If we're not in a rush, if we're not running down the street, racing after somebody who's about to jump in a car and drive away or do something, if we're here for a while, setting this thing up and doing something, we can talk about it. The DP says, what about this? Or something, I've been working on Food Paradise for the last year. And out there shooting, you're in the kitchen, you're shooting with these chefs, and they're making this dish and doing that and doing that. And part of the time is, they're looking through their camera at a very, very, very close shot sometimes, and something that you don't necessarily see with the naked eye, especially if I'm standing back, cameras are in there. So for instance, the DP will go like this to me, and what I'm doing is I'm clicking my fingers. You can't see that. I'm snapping my finger. The DP will go like this to me and point me towards something and go, you can really, really, really see the juices coming out of the hamburger. So I'll go, hey, that hamburger is really, can you tell me why this hamburger? So, it's because I do 70-30 instead of 80-20 on my beef to fat ratio. And I never, once I put it down, I never touch it. So I don't squeeze the juice out, so it builds up, and then when I put it on the bun is when it comes up. that's how you get these things. Now, I wouldn't have necessarily seen how juicy it was, but the DP is sitting there in an extreme close-up, and he can see it, you know, through the thing. I'm standing 3 feet back. I can't necessarily see it. So, I mean, that's just a minor thing, but it's like, why would I, if he's snapping at me to give me a piece of information, if I'm going to be the type of jerk who goes, I'm the director, you leave me alone, I'll do what I want to do. I don't think any good comes from closing yourself off. In the end, you know, if you're quote unquote running the set, it's your decision in the end. I want to do it this way, or I want to do it that way. And you can ultimately say, I'm going to do it this way, which is my way, which I believe is the right way. Or you can say, you know, Susan has a great idea, let's do it that way. You're making the decision, you know, ultimately you're making the decision, and you've got to live by it. But why turn down Susan's idea if it's a great idea, just because it's not mine?
So who were some of the other mentors that you've had over your career that really taught you something amazing? What did they teach you?
Well, earlier on, Eitan Keller, who was the executive producer of...
I know Eitan.
You know Eitan?
Yeah.
Eitan was the executive producer of America's Funniest People. I mean, Vin DeBona was the creator and the company owner, but Eitan was the actual hands-on showrunner. And he's the one who sort of guided me. And when it came time, he was the one I was nudging about directing. And so he was the one who came out on set with me the very first day and stood to the side and watched what I was doing and would come over and whisper to me in my ear this or that or this and that as you're running a little behind, or maybe try this or make sure the other cameras, because this is back in the day, we didn't have video villages or any of that kind of stuff. You know, so he says, make sure that camera over there is getting such and such coverage or whatever. And he came out twice, and then he said, you got this, and, you know, went on. And then he would always, you know, while they were cutting it together, he'd call me in and say, here, see this, see that, look at that, this was great, but if you'd done this a little bit, the next time, try this. So he was really great in terms of helping me with field directing. And of course, you know, other than my honeymoon in Mexico and a trip when I was a kid that included Canada with my parents, I'd never been anywhere overseas. So when I started working on The Amazing Race, and it was clear that I was going to travel with the main executive team, you know, of course it was Bert who really taught me how to exist in that kind of international environment. And we're talking down to there's the producing television thing, and then there's just the life experience. I was we were in, the first race took place, we left in early March, and, you know, we went to South Africa, we were running around and we were there for a day and a half, but then we were in Europe. And we were in France and, you know, places like that. And we got to our first really, really hot climate. And I'm in shorts. And Bert comes up to me and says, why are you wearing shorts? I said, well, it's hot. He goes, yeah, but animals in the street, dog bites, this kind of stuff. You got to always wear long pants. Don't wear shorts when you're on location, especially in third world countries where there's lots of stray animals running around in the street. Monkey could come over and bite you, you know, shit like that. Always. So, I mean, it was down to things like that. Not just, this is where you put a camera. I mean, he was the one who said, you know, a lot of people go to Paris and they stand on the Eiffel Tower and they shoot from the Eiffel Tower. And you sort of know it's Paris, but you have to be away from the Eiffel Tower and shoot so that you can see the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe. That's how you really know you're in Paris. Right. And he says, that's, you know, people literally, look at that, look, it's Paris. And they figure they're getting the great shot from on top of the Eiffel Tower. But no, because you can't see the Eiffel Tower. So, I mean, these are just little things. I mean, there were myriad things that from the first couple of seasons of that show, with, of course, Bert, but then also some of the other field producers who had been out on other international shows and done some of this, because by that point, some of them had done Survivor, a bunch of them had done Eco Challenge, which was the precursor to Survivor, and some other adventure-y, and some of them were from Wild Things. Right. So they had clocked a lot of time out in the fields, running around. Mm-hmm. So I learned a lot, a tremendous amount. But then every time you go onto a different format, you go into a show like Celebrity Rehab, and that was the first time I worked on something that was basically a house show. Even though it was in the rehab facility, it was the hidden cameras, it was basically operating the same way as Big Brother. Mm-hmm. And that and Paradise Hotel, and so you go on those shows, and the people that work those formats teach you, by watching them, you learn, this is how this genre gets done. And so that's really, and I'm grateful. So when I have younger folks that come on and work with me as assistants or interns or things like that, I try and give back by also being open and, sometimes it feels weird to sort of be like, who am I to impart knowledge? But at this point in my life, I have been doing it a while. So at least, I guess if someone's 23, I can, give them something without feeling like I'm being an arrogant jerk by giving them a lesson, But I try and give back for so many people gave to me,
Well, let me ask, if you could go back to 23-year-old version of yourself when you were 1987, besides the advice of bring your resume to bars when you go to work bar, what other advice would you give yourself?
Myself? I would say, I think this is something, I don't think there's anything new about this. I just think it's something that, it's a realization, I think most people, some people never do, but I think most people come to, is you have to enjoy the work. And you have to build a life for yourself outside of the work, because these huge dreams that you have, and we all have them, may never come true. Or not come true the way you wanted them to, or think they will, or hope they will. And you have to enjoy what you're doing while you're doing it, and you have to have a life. You have to have a family, or whatever life makes you happy. For some people, it's not family and children or things like that, or a house. For some people, it's, making enough money to be able to travel the world, and that makes them amazing. I know several people who have remained single well into their 50s, and they do charity work. When some, the tsunami happened in Sri Lanka. She was one of the first people to get on a plane and go volunteer to help the victims with the big tsunami in Sri Lanka. So it's build a life, do the things that make you happy, because the entertainment business, no matter what facet of it you're in, is only going to be the dream come true for a very, very, very small number of people. And even if the dream comes true, you might realize that, it didn't give me that. I think of Andre Agassi suddenly turning around and saying, I don't like tennis. I never liked tennis. That's why he gave up tennis. He's like, he wins Wimbledon, he wins the US Open, he's one of the best players and best paid players in the entire world. And he comes and he writes a book and he says, I never really liked tennis. My parents made me do it and I was good at it, but it doesn't make me happy, so I'm gonna stop. It's like, the biggest advice is to me as a younger self, I've told this story sometimes to other folks. It was before I came out here, when I was still in New York, and my goal was to be a director on Broadway doing musicals. And my idol was Harold Prince, who had done all of the Sondheim shows and a million shows. And I wanted to work for him as an AD, you know. And he had his offices in Rockefeller Center. And so I was going in. This is back maybe 1980, 85. There's no email. This is, you're walking in with your resume to hand to a secretary with a letter. Right. You know, cover letter, hello, dear sir, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm in the elevator. I get into the elevator, and he gets in the elevator. Now, he gets in the elevator, and it was lunchtime. He had gone out, if you know New York, he had gone out onto 6th Avenue. It was summertime, and he had bought himself a big honkin' gyro, covered with all the white sauce and the whole thing. And so he's carrying a New York Post or a Daily News under his one arm. He's holding the gyro with the other one and sort of licking at it to make sure it doesn't drip. He's not eating it. He's just like the ice cream cone. He's making sure that it doesn't drip. While you ride up, his office was on like the 20-something floor. So we're riding up, and I'm standing there next to him, and I'm thinking, say something. Introduce yourself. Say something. Say something. And I'm terrified. Absolutely terrified. And the door opens, and we both walk out, and of course, we're going to the same place. We're going to his office. So we get to his office, and he opens the door and lets me in first. You know, he holds the door open for me. He doesn't know who the fuck I am, a messenger or whatever. Back then, there were messengers delivered everything, right? Right. So I walk in, and then he walks in behind me and walks around and goes into his private office to eat his gyro. And I drop off I said, I'm here to drop off a resume, this and that, blah, blah, thank you very much, blah, blah, and I leave. And I have kicked myself for the last 35 years. Because it's like, why didn't I just say, Mr. Prince, I'm on my way up to your office to give you a resume because you are, you know, I admire you, I would like to work with you, you know, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I know you got your lunch in your hands and you want to eat your lunch, but I just wanted to let you know my name is Evan Weinstein. I'm dropping my resume and, you know, please give me some something. Right. I had one parent of one of my friends said, you should have asked him for a bite. To his dying day, he would have never forgotten the guy who asked him for a bite of his lunch in the elevator. I said, yeah. Okay. I had trouble just saying hello, but I would tell myself, don't be afraid. Don't be scared. I mean, because 2 years later, I handed the guy my resume in the bar and said directly to him. I didn't ask his name and say, where are you working, and then go drop it off. Right. I actually handed it to him. So I guess I had learned my lesson. And who knows, maybe nothing would have come of it. But don't be afraid. That's what I would tell myself.
And that is another episode of Season 2 of the Producers Lounge podcast. Thank you to my guest, Evan Weinstein, for joining us. You can find out more about him by checking out the show notes and visiting our website at greaterandgrander.com. Also, thanks to my friend and audio engineer, Rich Johnson. Our intro and outro music today was Menilmontant by Latché Swing. Our episode still image is by Ricardo Tomasz on Greater and Grander. If you have any questions or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know in the episode comments. You can stay up to date by following us on social media at Greater and Grander. Join us next week for more cocktails and questions, and until then, keep producing dreams.